following is my conversation with Martin Banke, Managing Director of Ceramic Speed. Martin has worked in the cycling industry for over 20 years, initially on the distributor side with EnergySport in Denmark, and then on the brand side with Ceramic Speed. Martin was the first employee of the Ceramic Speed cycling division. Ceramic Speed is a manufacturer of high-performance bearing technology. They also produce high-performance bottom brackets, pulley systems, pulley wheels, headsets, and bearings for wheel kits for the cycling industry. Ceramic Speed's products are found in the Pro Peloton as well as in some of the top-end bikes in the market. And in our conversation, we talk about his journey building this unique brand around a culture of innovation and performance. Well, Martin Banke, thank you so much for coming on today. It's really great to have you. I'm excited to hear more about Ceramic Speed, about your journey. So very excited to jump in. So maybe you can tell me where you're from and a little bit about, how you got started in the business, maybe?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, first of all. Pleasure to be on here. Yeah, I've been a cyclist more or less all my life from my early teens and done lots of other sports, but got into the bike industry when I started to become an engineer. I got an internship at my first real employee, EnergySport.
So where are you from originally?
I'm Danish, from the third largest town in Denmark called Odense, which is a very small town still for everyone else.
So you grew up in a pretty small town then?
Yeah, it's like 100,000 people in a town. So compared to most of the listeners to this show, I think it's a pretty small place. Yeah.
What did you study at university?
Engineering with the focus on production technologies and materials mainly. And then I took as many business classes outside the more tech classes that I could. I knew that I would probably never sit behind a desk all my life doing design work, that I wanted to be more involved in the business side of whatever business I would work in also. So other than just taking all the science and tech classes, I also took management and finance and stuff like that to learn more and broader about businesses than just the technical and technological part of it.
So you kind of had a strong attraction to the business side, to the commercial side, from when you were very young, it sounds like.
Yeah, I had a clear thought that I wanted to work with. At that time, everything was physical products, right? There was not many people who worked in a digital only world. At that time, I wanted to be able to work with products and understand the product and give input to a product, but I also knew pretty early that I wouldn't be a design engineer all my life not only, but working on product designs and development always. But I had a strong, I probably always had it in me that I want to kind of be able to be part of the decision making and leading the decisions and whatever I'm involved in. I always want to be a big part of where we're moving and what we're doing, and knew that pretty early. So that's why I also knew that I needed to know more than just CAD drawing and static calculations and so on. I needed to understand more of what happens in a business on whatever financial management level and business strategies and so on. So yeah, I knew that pretty early.
So you were studying engineering, and then you said that you began working for this distribution company early on. What was the name? I'm sorry, I missed the name of the distribution company that you worked. What is
EnergySport.
EnergySport. Okay. And is that a big Danish distributor?
When I started my first round there as an intern, when I got in contact with them as a duathlete who had them as a sponsor, and I started talking to them, and we found out that I could do an internship there. At that time, they were the founder and his brother and one sales guy and one person in the warehouse. So that was like a 4 or 5 man band at that time. But during the 6-7 years I was there, we grew it to plus 20 people operation who covered not only Denmark, but also mainly Sweden and Norway, and went from 80% of the business being high-five sports nutrition to attracting brands like Zip and Speedplay and ASOS Vredestein Tires, some of the pretty big prominent brands in the business, and still big brands. So it was a very small company, and we grew it to one of the biggest and the most high-end distribution companies in the region.
In Denmark?
Yes, in Denmark and the other Nordic countries.
Okay. And so were you able to be involved in that, into helping the company grow like that?
Highly. I mean, I owe the founder of that company, EnergySport, a lot of how I managed to get myself in a position to work with Ceramic Speed and be part of the growth of Ceramic Speed, because when I started with this distribution company, I literally became part of all decision making from day one. I had a little bit of background more theoretical background from university, and most of the people there had the other backgrounds. They'd been really good cyclists and stuff like that, but I came with a different skill set than the other people who were there. So they immediately, as I was like 22 or 23 or whatever, they immediately pulled me in and made me part of all decision making very early on, and I got to work with pretty much everything I wanted. So I owe a big part of my development in business to that. It was like a perfect playground for a young kid who wanted to just jump on the task and be part of a cool journey. So that was a huge opportunity and really important to where I am today.
Sounds like you had fun. I mean, I can see it in your eyes that you had fun.
Lots of fun. And many really late nights in the office. Few people who wanted to try to conquer the world, but we had fun and we made a ton of arrows, but we also got some really nice wins and successes for sure.
So what's it take to be, I guess this would have been from 2003 to 2010. Is that the time frame?
I started with Ceramic Speed in 2010. So from mid 2000 until 2010, I was with this company.
EnergySport. And so you were bringing on new brands. You were expanding into the Nordic market. So Denmark and the two Nordic markets, or three, was it like Sweden, Finland, Norway, or?
It depended. Some brands we had in both Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland. Some brands we only had in Finland, Norway, Denmark. That always depended a little bit which other distribution they had exactly in place, right? So that depended a little bit, but in general.
So what's it take to be successful as a distributor of cycling products?
At that time, at least, I think one of our strengths was our willingness to work close and invest with our dealers. I think a distributor who can actually offer solutions to the dealers, who offers good in-store materials and so on, can get very far, right? Many distributors already back then and to a higher degree now, in my opinion, are like the classical distributors who's sitting in their little office with products in their warehouse and waiting for the phone to call, right? We immediately started investing heavily in our own sales team. In Denmark, there's not a big tradition for sales reps like in North America, for instance. Here it's more predominant that you hire your own staff, and we did that early on to get out there, be with the customers, both the dealers, but also do like events with the dealers, with the end consumers, and that way got much closer to the business. And of course, we brought in brands like Asos and Zip and Speedplay and high-end brands like that, right? Of course, it opens more doors than if you show up with some average product that could be substituted by any other distribution company in the business, right? At that time, if you wanted high-end carbon wheels that would actually last, you should probably go for Zip or a few other options, right? And Asos were super aggressive and really invested together with us and the dealers in big in-store presentations of their clothing and so on. So providing that and enabling that, I think that was a big part of our success back then.
So creating like a partnership with these dealers alongside
Exactly.
some of these opportunities that you had by, it sounds like you guys specialized. You had a positioning of a little bit higher end premium brands, which maybe that, I don't know, does the positioning of a distributor like that, does that help?
I mean, I think it helped us in the way that we could focus on products with a fairly high margin and a high revenue, and we didn't spend time on a lot of the like lower margin products where you're fighting for a few cents here and there, right? When we went in and did something, we could actually make money, and the dealer could make money. And I think that kind of put us in a special bracket that gave us more opportunity. But of course, you also
Sure.
need the customers, and you also need to convince the consumer then to buy the wheels that are 4 times more expensive than the competitor maybe. So it's I mean, nothing is easy, right? But at least we had a pretty clear strategy, and we only went for the high end stuff.
And then you mentioned that you began working with Ceramic Speed through EnergySport, through your distributor that you worked for, and you began to create a relationship with Ceramic Speed then at that point?
Yeah, exactly. I think back in 2008, the founder and CEO of Ceramic Speed, Jacob, came to EnergySport, and at that time, Ceramic Speed had grown to a size where he couldn't do everything on his own anymore, right? It was still a fairly small company, but he realized that he needed distributors. Ceramic Speed had distributors in other countries at that time, but he'd still been covering Denmark himself and visiting Danish bike shops himself. But he realized that he couldn't grow the business on a global scale and then still go around visiting Danish dealers. So he reached out and asked if EnergySport would be the distributor for the Nordic countries. And from the first time I ever heard about Ceramic Speed, my engineering background and my own sporting background as a duathlete immediately clicked with everything I heard about Ceramic Speed, with the new technologies and all the exciting stuff that Jacob had going on. So it was an easy decision for us to take Ceramic Speed on in the product range in EnergySport. So that's how I got to work with Ceramic Speed initially.
And so you began distributing the brand, and you began creating a relationship
Exactly.
with the owner, with the founder.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that developed into eventually you moving from the distribution side to the brand side. And when you came over to Ceramic Speed, what was your first role there?
We literally set up a new company in the Ceramic Speed group, which should focus solely on the bike industry. We have a sister company who's focused on industrial applications with the same core technology in the ceramic hybrid bearings. But now we have like 2 divisions, one for industrial and one for the bike industry. I was hired as the director of the cycling company from day one, pretty much. From day one, literally. I was the only employee, so it's pretty easy to make me the director, right? I was the 6th employee at Ceramic Speed when I started in 2010. There was the founder and the director of the industrial company, and then me, and then 2 people in production and a part-time bookkeeper. I think that's pretty much what it was. So
What was the first product that Ceramic Speed had in the cycling business? Was it was it the groups?
Jacob started with the bearings. The ceramic hybrid bearings was kind of, that's the core, right? That's still the core of our business, while we do other products now. The high quality ceramic hybrid bearing is still the core of what we do, and that was how Jacob got started with the bike industry, was through bearings for bikes with this technology. And when I started, majority of our business was still bearings, of course, a lot of wheel bearings and so on. We had a few bottom brackets, and we had some plastic pulley wheels where we popped out the standard bearing and installed our own speed bearings. That was pretty much what we had in the product range from day one when I started there.
And then, so you, at that point, you had this, it sounds like a pretty small range, but you saw a lot of opportunity there, in a sense that this was a premium bearing with a story to tell that could differentiate, that you guys could go to the market, and it was a differentiator in terms of performance, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I just lost you there. Can you just repeat the last part one more?
Yeah, that's okay. So you guys had this unique product, high performance bearings that kind of came from the industrial world. So they were bringing this industrial technology into the bike industry. And I remember I remember you guys had those great ads, amazing ads, where you would spin the pulley, and it would be the traditional one and then the ceramic speed, and that one would just continue to spin. And I still remember that to this day. I don't know who did that, but they should have been paid well for that job that they did. But so you guys were coming in with the ceramic technology in the bearings and in the components so sort of that performance angle that no one had really done, or at least differentiated. Like these were just run of the mill in the past, I suppose, run of the mill bearings, a bearing, and you guys were able to sort of tell a story.
Yeah, when Ceramic Speed started, I mean, most actually that been kind of it gone downhill for bearings in bikes before Ceramic Speed came on board, right? When you look back in the days and you had the really nicely designed old Cambi hubs with cup and cone design, and you could take out the balls after each ride and polish and make your own preload adjustment and lubricate and so on. From that to where bearings in bikes were 15 years ago, where it moved to like industrial style radial bearings with huge fat seals and lots of grease. Actually, the performance for the rider went a lot downhill. So I think when Jacob got into the business with ceramic bearings, it was the first time that anyone in modern time in cycling at least really started focusing on the bearing performance on bikes. And I mean, everything on a bike spins, and in everything that spins there's a bearing. And Jacob realized that there was a huge potential for gains on the bike. We were the first company to introduce ceramic hybrid bearings to the bike industry. Jacob, back in the days in 2001, spent the entire Tour de France with the then CSC Tiscali, Bjarne Ries's old, or his first team on the World Tour, which was not called the World Tour back then. And that was the first time the professional cycling world saw ceramic hybrid bearings anywhere. And from then on, he started growing the product range with, of course, bearings, and got into pulley wheels and a few bottom bracket standards and so on. And when I got on board, there was still very few others who spoke about ceramic bearings, and most of those who did probably didn't believe enough in the technology that they thought they could actually price it at a realistic level where it needs to be to do really high quality ceramic bearings. So the market saw a quick inflow of really poor quality ceramic bearings that gave us a lot of issues the early years, because ceramics got this what to say story of being low quality and that it couldn't take the forces of a bike and yada. But in reality, it was just people who tried to make quick money by using some low quality ceramic materials that wasn't suited for bike applications.
So it was sort of this. It sounds like it came from performance, like world tour performance, professional cycling performance, where you guys were able to prove that these products were superior. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, Ceramic Speed is built on performance. Jacob, the founder, was a 2-time world record holder in 24-hour inline skating. That's how he got in kind of in contact with bearings and started actually being interested in bearings, right? So when he set his second world record, when he did the 505 Ks in 24 hours on roller skates, he had hand built his own first ceramic bearings for his roller skates, and that's how he started, how he got into the business of bearings, and ever since then, everything we've done as a company has been based on performance and innovation and constantly moving the bar higher and higher. We've never done a product that was less performance than what we already had to make it cheaper or anything. we're always trying to move the bar up and do better. Of course, friction is still the big thing, but also adding more lifetime longevity on the products and so on. We're always pushing to optimize everything we do.
And so you started the cycling division, and this was back in 2010, and you guys began kind of finding the niche for performance for road cycling as kind of the awareness around that grew. You guys then have expanded the product lines over the years. Mm-hmm. So with that, you were responsible for both from the beginning sales and then as well as product, or did you have a team that helped you with that?
It was literally only me and Jacob being involved with the entire development of the company. There's a couple of people in production, so it was literally like every month when I had enough orders to pay my salary, I would walk into Jacob's office and tell him, okay, now I can get paid. So the rest of the money we can spend on some marketing or some development, or I can buy a flight ticket and travel somewhere and visit someone. And then we spent the money we made that way. And then next month I would start over again. And when I had enough orders that I could secure the salary for the month, we could start investing in. That was literally how it was. And
just hand to mouth.
We've done everything ourselves. Before me, Jacob did everything. I've done most of what he did, but there's still some things that were actually taken care of when I got on board, right? And from then, I mean, when we did our first aluminium pulley wheels, for instance, we did some sketches for designs and tolerances and so on, and went to a nearby machine shop and had the first prototypes made. And that way is that we didn't have an R&D department who we could just tell to make this beautiful new product, right? We could only do it ourselves. And then gradually over time, we started hiring the first engineers. We didn't have an engineering manager at that time, so that was still me who were overseeing that part of the business. But at least now I got an engineer to actually do some work and speed up the process, right? And the same with marketing. I think we got our first marketing manager in 2012, who we shared between the cycling and the industrial division. None of us could afford to have a full-time marketing manager, so we shared one resource, which we've done many times, and which has been a big benefit for both companies, right? That we could do things a little bit earlier maybe than we would otherwise have been able to afford, because we could kind of share the cost. So for the first years, we did everything, and then it started slowly. We got a marketing manager. We started to hire some sales people. And in 16, I think, we hired our first R&D manager. So it's actually not that many years ago. Up until then, every time we did something new, when we did the first OSBW systems, for instance, that was still me managing the R&D and development team. And of course, there was a team then, but I was still overseeing that while I was also still doing a significant part of the sales and involved in everything else. So well, some busy but fun years.
Sure. Yeah, and so it sounds like since then, maybe you can give us an idea. So you went from just you, and now how many people are on the cycling team?
For the entire group, between cycling and industry, about 110 people. If we should split it down, I think probably around 80 of those specifically working with the bike part of the business. The industrial division has a huge potential and some really, really good solutions, but it also turns out that if you think the world of cycling is conservative, many industrial companies are even more conservative, actually. So it's taking a little bit longer, but they're starting to grow quickly also.
Did you say 80? 80?
Yeah.
80?
Yeah.
Wow. So you're a busy guy.
Yeah, we grew a lot. I mean, we assemble all products in Denmark, right? So out of that, maybe a quarter of those 80 or something like that are working in production. Sampling, bearing. I mean, every single bearing that goes out the door has been hand built and quality checked manually. We don't have big bearing machines that just spit out 1,000 bearings per hour, right? Everything is hand built. Every single OSPW system or bottom bracket the bearings has been pushed in with a manual tool and checked and installed and packaged in a nice aftermarket packaging and so on. So there's a lot of manual processes, of course, but that's also the way we are securing that every single product that leaves Søren Speed is perfect and fully lives up to ours and our customers' expectations.
So it's a very, I guess we could still say sort of a niche because it's a performance. It's definitely an upgrade type product, right? Is that a fair term?
That's a very fair term for sure.
Okay. And so I guess my question then is if we can dive into what your sales strategy looks like. So I'm assuming you have OEM customers. You have it'll be like really high end, high spec OEM. Then you've got aftermarket. And then within the aftermarket, you've got dealers, marketplaces, and then direct to consumer. Is that, did I?
True.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have OEM customers, and as you say, that those are of course mainly the very, very high end in each of their category, both road and some triathlon specific, and we are making a really big push in the off-road categories. So we're starting to get some mountain bike specific brands on, or at least some of the bigger brands who have all categories are starting to use our products on the mountain bike side also. Then we have aftermarket, as we call it, which is kind of divided in two. We have distribution in some countries where we deal with, like my old employer, EnergySport in Denmark, or we deal with the QBP in North America, for instance. But then we also have a dealer direct model in many countries where instead of having this distribution company between, we identify the most suited dealers for Ceramic Speed in Germany, for instance. We don't have a distributor in Germany. We go dealer direct. So we have a couple of people in our Danish office who speaks German, and they're then servicing the German market directly from Denmark. Of course, they do a lot of traveling down there, but they also do a lot like we do here online. And we do that in more and more markets actually, because we started speaking about distributors, and not in all cases for sure. There are some really, really good and professional distribution companies out there who really adds value, but there's also a lot of distribution companies who's just moving boxes and making a margin and not really promoting your brand or
well, the distribution network
the customers.
The distribution network has been under a lot of pressure with direct to consumer. That there's a bit of revolution, and we can go down this rabbit hole, but I don't know if this is
No, I don't think
this is the venue for that.
No. But we do have distributors in some markets, and in markets where we don't find a good match, we're going dealer direct. So then we identify the right dealers for that market and deal directly with them.
Do you have agents on the ground?
No, actually, in North America we have both. We actually have a complete mix of everything. We have distribution companies, we have agents in a lot of the states, and we also have our own internal sales team. So depending on, literally, it's up to the dealer. If they want to deal directly with us, they can do that. If they have a good rep who reps Ceramic Speed, who they have good relations to, and they just want him or her to take care of Ceramic Speed business, they can do that. Or they can order Ceramic Speed from QBP when they order all the other stuff on Mondays, right? So that's a very mixed market. But other than that, we don't have sales agents. And then we have direct to consumer from our own website.
How is that going?
Many years ago. Yeah, very early on, where all of the discussions back in the days with Canyon being only dealer direct, and bike shops who didn't want to work on their bikes, and with the big online chains, Wiggly and Chainrex, and those ones, if you were on those platforms, dealers didn't want to sell your products. Early on, we said we want Ceramic Speed to be available to anyone, everywhere. We know we are niche, right? There's no guarantee that any local bike shop is gonna carry our products, So we want to make sure that anyone who want to buy ceramic speed can buy it online from our own platform, and we implemented that pretty early on, and it's not a it's one of our smallest business legs, so to say, but it's still a platform that we're maintaining, and we know we need it, and for sure, especially during COVID, for instance, it was an extremely strong platform because it was so hard to get products anywhere, but we were still operational through all of COVID, so anyone who wanted ceramic speed could buy online directly from us, right? So it's a part of the business. It's not huge. It's not getting crazy amounts of attention, but it's important that we have it, and for the future it will for sure be a focus also.
So someone that wants your product, they would want to upgrade one of their components. How do you? And I know you guys create awareness around it. I know I'd seen that the ad that we talked about before with the pulley wheel. So I guess what are you guys? How are you guys going to market with regards to, like, which channels to create more awareness around your product? Like what are some of the main strategies that you guys are employing? Are you guys using online ads? Are you using Teams? Are you using PR? Like, can you talk a little bit about like where that's going, just to kind of give people an idea of how you're going to market?
Sure. We're still a very technical product, right? Which also, I think, just touching back on the dealer direct to consumer strategy, we're never going to have a huge amount of our business direct to consumer online, because when you buy a ceramic speed upgrade part, you still need it installed somewhere, and it's far from everyone who even wants to try and replace a real bearing or a bottom bracket or whatever. So we still have a lot of focus on our dealers, and actually education of our dealer network to enable them to speak to the customers, the end consumers, and push products to them. Of course, we use not all, but most of the big social platforms. We are on TikTok. We've been on Instagram and Facebook forever. Yeah, we have a TikTok channel also.
Not many people, not many brands are on TikTok. That surprises me.
We do have a TikTok channel. Honestly, I think initially when we got on there, we thought it would be bigger than it is, and I think it's taking. I mean, I'm not that deep in everything we do anymore, but it's taking less and less priority in my team, I think. But at some point we felt that we had to get on there at least. But of course, everything digital media, we are there. We have a YouTube channel. Where some of our most viewed videos are actually installation and maintenance videos, right? Because people need to know how to deal with the products. But we're still spending more on doing dealer summits, as we like to name it, where we gather 10, 20 dealers from a certain region and do a bearing school. So run them through everything about, they actually start by building their own bearing by hand to really make them understand what is this. And sometimes we intentionally make them build a bearing with a wrong ball size to create a bearing that actually doesn't work, to show them what happens if you build a bad bearing, right, a low quality bearing, what's the outcome, to really make those who's representing the brand to the end consumer in the end, make them understand what is the difference between a ceramic speed bearing and any whatever random, if it's a low quality ceramic or a steel bearing, because we know we are the world's most expensive bearings for bikes, right? So it's super important that those who are selling the product actually understand what is the difference, why are we so much more expensive? And when you had the bearing in your hand, you tried to build it yourself, you've seen what happens if you do it wrong, or you use the wrong tolerances or whatever. If you try to push a bearing in a pulley wheel with the wrong tolerances and you create preload on the bearing, for instance, all of those things, we are investing probably more in that, the direct physical interaction with our distributors and our dealers than we spend on most social and digital medias. We use sponsorships. We've done that from day one. I think it's a big part of our DNA. One of our values is winning, and winning mentality. It comes also from Jacob being a 2-time world record holder, right? we've always wanted to be associated with the world's best riders and teams, and very early on they adapted Ceramic Speed as something we usually sponsor 2 to 5 World Tour teams in a season, but typically we then sell products to 6 or 10 teams, because riders or mechanics who used to be on a team with Ceramic Speed products move to a new team, and suddenly they don't have it anymore, and they realize the difference, and then the teams come to us and buy products, and often we have to black out the logos and do all sorts of stuff to cover it up, right? That's lots of politics in this. We can spend another podcast
Sure.
on that, how it is to be a smaller player in this field, but let's keep that for another day. But the sponsorships has always been a really big part of our storytelling and validation of our products, and it still is to this day. We opened our new HQ a couple of weeks ago, and we had guys like Kasper Askren, for instance, coming by and being part of the opening ceremony. Magnus Ditlev, who holds the world record on the Ironman distance in triathlon, he was there, and those guys, they're closely associated, and they want to be, because they know it makes a difference.
Right. So it's performance and it's innovation. This is sort of the core, which marries up really nicely with the pro team. So you're sort of able to, and then like I think TikTok, it's like I could see it makes sense that you guys would be on TikTok, because you're an innovative company and you're always looking for, it's kind of in your DNA, that you're looking for the next thing. Yep. And so you guys were open. So you're not a conservative company. You're very kind of a dynamic company.
Yeah, I think that's a good description. Dynamic. We're not conservative in the way that we're slow and don't want to change. We always take our time to do our due diligence and make sure that we're making informed decisions and so on. But we're also very quick if we want to do something, we're super dynamic and we can do it in a few days, right? We are 100% privately owned, so we don't have to ask anyone if we can do this or that. If we have money in the account, we can use it for whatever we want, and that's a big freedom also as a company to be able to adapt in a market where things, especially in the last couple of years, right? You've done lots of podcasts about what's happening in the world of cycling and the business, cycling business recently, and to be able to adapt in this market is super important, and to be able to stay agile in this market is one of the biggest, in my opinion at least, contributors to stay successful, for sure.
Well, it feels like you guys are positioned really well, really clear positioning. You're telling a story, and those are the qualities I think that for long-term success right now, especially in these very, very tough times, is a good position to be in. It feels like companies that maybe don't have quite as clear a positioning and quite as clear, a defined product or message are going to have a little more trouble, because the customers, and it also has to do with the way that communication works today is, we have much less intention. And so the message needs to be very clear. When I met one of your colleagues at, I believe it was one of the trade shows, I don't remember which one, might have been Rock d'Azur last year, I saw that you had a new product line, a whole new brand that you guys are working on. Are you doing that? Is that under your umbrella?
Is that the UFO category of lubrication and so on? Yeah. Yeah, yes. That's also, so we have this family of lubrication and maintenance products that's called UFO. It's actually an old brand name that we bought from the old Friction Facts lab. I don't know if you're even aware of that, but a guy in Boulder, Jason Smith, who had a testing facility company called Friction Facts, who was specialized in testing friction in bike products. And we had a sales office in Boulder back then, and we still do. And we used Friction Facts as a third-party test facility. So when we were developing new products or wanted to test our current products against competitors and so on, we would be paying Friction Facts to do comparative testing. And other than doing friction testing, they also did wax chains. And that's where the UFO name came up. So they did pre-treated chains, and they were named UFO for ultra-fast optimization. So we bought that company and bought the brand name UFO with that, and the wax formulation and so on that they owned back then, and hired Jason Smith as our CTO back then, and is actually still part of the Ceramic Speed family in the, driven the chainless bike we did years ago. He was the inventor of that, and we still own majority of that company where he works now, but that's another story. That could be a fun podcast one day.
He was showing it when he did all the
first time. That's first time at Eurobike.
Yeah, Eurobike.
We honestly, let's give it a few months, and we should talk about that, because that could be a fun one. But then, we hired Jason. We bought this UFO brand, and his first task was to develop the world's fast drip chain lubrication. Again, we always do full on optimization, right? We don't want to just do some semi-fast something. So he developed literally the world's fastest drip coating. We call it because it's a wax-based chain coating. So it's not an oil, it's not a normal lubrication. So we called it UFO chain coating, which was a wax formula that you put on the chain, and it completely dries up and hardens. So you have this super smooth surface that just repels off any dirt and grime, and it has the lowest friction of any available lubrication at that time. And then from there on, we've just built the product range. So that formula went out for a faster formula a couple of years ago, and then we've been adding special versions for wet conditions. I'm looking out of my window here. I just came back from a 55K ride before this podcast, and it's been raining and snowing for 3 weeks, so it was just full of mud holes and water all over. So we had to do a special formula for that. So now we have a nice range of all-round wet conditions and indoor lubrication. Actually, the indoor mainly because of all those riding trainers inside, right? You don't want that if it's wax or if it's oil spraying all over your nice, if you're living in an apartment in New York, right? You don't want that on your nice flooring.
Sure.
So we developed this formula that just totally sticks to your chain. It's more sticky than our other formulations, but you'll never see anything peel off or get off your chain. And then we added drivetrain cleaner, bike wash, and so on. So bearing grease and bearing cleaner, because bearing cleaner is actually a funny one. Every time we talk to people about maintaining the bearings, they ask, but what do I clean my bearing with, right? And people do all sorts of really strong chemicals that are bad for both humans and environment. So we did this fully, what do we call, eco-friendly. And all of our products are, by the way, they're all PFAS free and fully environmentally friendly. All packaging moved with the reintroduction this year. Everything moved to plastic that's either it's all fully recyclable, and most of it has recycled plastic in it and so on. And this year we kind of relaunched the entire product family, and that's what you spoke to my colleague about, right?
Yeah.
So completely new branding, new colors, new labels, new displays for the shops and so on. And it's still branded Ceramic Speed, but it's like this big UFO, and then there's a small Ceramic Speed in the corner, which is also, sometimes there's lots of opinions about why a team can't use Ceramic Speed products because of another sponsor and yada yada, but they can actually use UFO maybe if we don't talk too much about Ceramic Speed, but just talk about UFO instead and so on. So for different reasons, we decided to go heavy on the UFO branding and just tone down Ceramic Speed a little bit on that product. And that's the first time we really have consumables like this, which is, of course, gives another kind of products to the dealer to sell. Suddenly they will have customers walking in monthly or weekly or whatever to buy a Ceramic Speed product.
Sure.
And we also have dealers who then get in touch with Ceramic Speed who would maybe never start with selling a OSPW or bottom bracket, but they can actually sell the care and maintenance products, and then they maybe see that the products are really, really good, and maybe we are shortening the distance to them trying to sell a OSPW next time. So I think it helps kind of spread the brand to a broader audience.
Yeah, totally. No, that's so it's a second brand, or it's still under the Ceramic Speed in terms of like website and everything.
It still sits in the Ceramic Speed main website, and it's still in the same price list and everything. So yeah, other than us using the UFO name for that product category, it's just a fully integrated Ceramic Speed product.
Okay. And I guess looks like we're coming up on almost an hour here, but it sounds like this has been like super interesting in terms of like, I mean, I can just see the passion that you have for this business, but not cycling specific as much as feels like you just like to build and like to innovate and like to, you know, push, because I could see kind of from the beginning when you started in the distribution business, you know, you were able to bring a lot of innovation, bring on new brands, premium brands. So it feels like that premium positioning and the advantages of that and the strong positioning that you brought to EnergySport, you've also brought to Ceramic Speed in a sense.
Yeah, I think so. It was already in Jacob's strategies that at that time we didn't have written strategies, right? But it was always about performance and innovation, and always striving for the next better thing, and making life for cyclists better somehow. If we can reduce friction, then let's see if we can increase the lifetime of a given product, or make more efficient chain lubrications or whatever. It's just in our DNA that's what we do, and with the team we have now, I can focus a lot of my resources both on the business side, but I'm also still fairly involved with the product side, and I really love that. I can't do the stuff that the engineering team is doing, but I can, in most cases, I'm still able to understand what they're doing, and I can still challenge and ask questions and be part of the processes, and I really enjoy that, and that's what I think keeps my motivation super high, is that the company is all about innovation and keeping pushing the boundaries, also internally in our internal processes, adapting new technologies and so on. That's very clear that's my drive for sure, and that's the drive of Ceramic Speed, and it's been a really good match up until here for sure. And there's still a lot of innovation to do.
Yeah, there always will be. I had this conversation with someone the other day where they're like, it was actually Simon Mottram from Rafa, when we were talking about, he goes, yeah, everybody thinks that like right now everything's been done. He's like, it's not. He's like, in done. 10 or 15 years, everything's going to be different. And totally. Anybody that thinks that today is, you know, that everything has already been invented, you know, is going to lose.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. There's so much more to get done out there. And we usually say to ourselves that we're only scratching the surface. There's so much more for us also to be done still. So many more products to develop, and so many cool challenges to take up. So we're far from done, that's for sure.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Martin. It was a real pleasure talking to you. I'm glad we got to dive into all this stuff, and you will. Sounds like you want to come back. I'd love to have you back. We can dive into maybe talk about the chainless adventure, or we'll find something.
Thanks for having me, for sure. I'm happy to come back. Let's touch base on the driven adventure when we get to the other side of the new year. Yes. There's some funny stories to be told about that for sure. So thanks a lot for having me.
I also we didn't talk about COVID, and we didn't talk about, like, I typically talk about COVID with people because it's such a gigantic thing in the cycling industry, but you know, it's not positive, but it's very interesting in terms of topic. Mm-hmm. So anyway, but if people want to reach you, where can they find you, Martin?
Yeah, I'm on X as Banke, and on Insta as hr.banke, and on Facebook and LinkedIn. So literally anywhere, Martin Banke, you'll be able to find me on most of the main socials. I'm not on TikTok.
Okay. Thank you, Martin.
Cool. Thanks.